저기다 지게 rabjung 제주 셈바 rabjung이나 되네 ane 개바 로봇 매바 비메된 님도 두시네 되게 말해야다 되네 맨날 짐바 대소 안에 대소다 태바 제주 셈비게 안 람냠내 기심바티게 차산이야 아니 90 대바당 90 제고래서 90 제바 맞지 아니 소소랑게 될이야 롭정제는 순 냠내 제고래서 먼저 그 생각 되고 싶어요.
Good evening. Last week we looked at a verse in which it was stated that ordained bodhisattvas should not teach a woman alone. In order to teach women, or to teach a woman, there should at least be others present. And we also looked at how the bodhisattva should show deep respect for both the teachings of the hero and solitary realizer paths, as well as their practitioners.
I didn't understand my share. That did it. Yachin Chugi, New Yoruba, that New Yoruba, maybe Chola Jermicha, Jeva Yonso Durmicha, and Dodang Aki Timijas.
And continuing from the 90th verse in the 5th chapter, those who are vessels for the vast Bodhisattva Dharma, do not bring them to the Dharma of the hero and solitary realizer lineage. Do not cause them to completely reject the Bodhisattva conduct. Do not mislead through sutras and mantras.
On the Meba Sigurta, Niniki, Yachin Chugi, New Yoruba, Janju Simpiki, Chu, Yaman Gialia, and or Delia Meba Yoba, Donya Dumba Yoba, Denigi, and the Chu Yaman Jene, Console Chu Shevaina, Yaman Giagi. And Jing Nubata, and the Deniki Dubata, Dumba Yobaina, Delia Geshu, New Yoruba, the Chu Sheagida, Janjusimpi, Yamna Yimba Sheadida, New Shina Tigores, or New Yoruba, in the Jala, Mason Nedia, Iharu, and the Chulun Masaru, Chulu, Tata Chago Marwa, that Yameba Tata Yoban, and the Chulu Shur, Dinashenda, Janjusimpi, Jamnijeta, Janjusim Gisimbi in a patient to gain Yamlen Chair, Dubata, Dumba Yoba, or Dinigi, Meva Yoba, as or Dini, Yeshu near Yoba. On Delia, Dinig Meva Yoba Gilia, and maybe Chola Jermija, and then all there's an that Dinishabin that Sanjo want to help big universe, Janjusim begin Yamen Jail, Galeka said, Dealing nearly Sosugi, Tarbich, Govan Topna, the Yahuara said, Dini ma Nyandigalam. Yamlen Cheban and the Sosuke, Tarbico one, Yoto to Reseada, Yandigalam Yamlet in the Yakuor Seada, Dine Rangi Lam Yamlet in the Yakuor said, all those in a shin, ma Sember Jurchin, my Yandila Rangi Lam Yamnejalia, and the Yakuor said, Dushin, Shigio Mares, maybe Shola Chermijas, Denigma, Dushin. Jigio Mares, the main picture in Yandiga Lamna, Rangi Lam Yamlet in the Yakuor, the Dili, Jajizim Pikin Yamlet Jabala, Dina Yamlet in the Pando chair, you said, Dushin Goba, Guratan, Gurcia, or some Guratan, your Mares order.
Look at the first line first. Those who are vessels. So this term vessel sometimes comes up. Usually we know it as a vessel being a container. So if a vessel doesn't have a crack or a hole, it can contain a liquid in it and will not leak. But here, a vessel, in the Dharma, a vessel will refer to an individual, a person. And in this case, the vessel or the person has a deep aspiration for the goals of the Bodhisattva. So such a person, who one would assume would be a suitable vessel in the sense that they have, through this deep aspiration, their vessel is not cracked or doesn't have a hole, so they retain the teachings because of the quality of their aspiration for the goals of Bodhisattva. So such a person then, who holds the aspiration of the goals of the Bodhisattva, now the second line, should not be, one should not cause them to give up on the goal of the Bodhisattva, in other words, becoming a Buddha for the sake of others, by telling them, actually, to become a Buddha, it takes such a length of time. You have to accumulate so much merit. not only are you accumulating extensive merit, but you're having to interact with common, ordinary sentient beings. And you know how difficult they can be. So in this way, you perhaps discourage them from striving to become a bodhisattva or being a new bodhisattva to become a Buddha. And rather encourage them, why don't you go for your own individual liberation? Engage in the training, especially of the hero lineage, where the goal is achieved very quickly, or that of the solitary realizer lineage, where you still achieve quite some benefits, but it doesn't take nearly as long as the bodhisattva path. So here, one is discouraging someone who is deeply inclined, at the very least, deeply inclined to become a bodhisattva, discouraging them from this worthy goal and pushing them in the direction of the hero or solitary realizer lineage.
Jinegi me korangi samlo jamni je janju sim nyamlin je gi dinegi pajin tu janju sim ji sim bi dine pajin tu nyamlin je dewa yoba jilia andi nyamlin je ma ju ba ne jisade jamni je nyamlin je ma ju ba ina that diba chimo sair ba de ne kol ya nyandu gi lam ra ya lam lo ko resip ma she gwa ta ba ina dinegi she ba ne de so so nyeba chimo sa ji re andi ma se ko karsne ko semje 탐지기 되는 산지 고모 토비 치료도 남냠내지 되버 여바 되니게 여바 질이야 대 산요 고모 토비 치료 냠내 남냠내데 맞된 바제 제마 주바 있나 되네 지게 산지 고모 토발이야 콜 바시 지고로 봐 지사디 지고 맞되네 사디 지나다 고롱기 산지게 손에 최대한 코랑 감다 매바도 팀비게 최송고를 세우면서 코랑 매바 전주심배 남냠내시 뭐 여바들이야 전주심배 남녀 준비한 남자들이 봐 송고고르마도 dim 아디체네 야고요 말하세네 년뒤에 남다 란게 남제네 인디 야가요리 타바 교가 토그리세 되니 시셰바나 네 지고 말해서 되니게 인자르메샤 되니 시교 말해서 나 교와 땅 투바다 마투바나 소용고로데 곧 마셰베나 그런 되바메바 쳬베이나 지지 어당 하나 전주신 벨람냐나 디라지긴세 델리아 슈케기 용시게 가셔야 지 교화를 어디 교회시바디 덴바레세네 교화를 용시게로 와다 이나다 마 수야들라 셰들 되니게 전주신 벨람냐네 등에 여바다 되니게 신의 지리간델이야 전주신 벨람냐네 마셰바지 년되나 란게 람게르바디 신의 대지고 말레스 다니 고 교화당 투바다 마투바다 나서 용그리다 거기서 교화당 마투바나 소소 시행원에 되는 시베나다 노르타로 와다 디바차 소소기 녀바사사로
Here one is being guided against discouraging those who either aspire to become a bodhisattva or are a new bodhisattva. So they've developed uncontrived bodhicitta, they've made the vows of the bodhisattva, and therefore they are engaging in the various practices of a bodhisattva. So they're engaging in generosity, ethical restraint, patience, joyous perseverance, concentration, and wisdom, the cultivation of these 6 practices, but conjoined with bodhicitta. So to discourage such a person from continuing in their worthy goal of spiritual development to the point of perfection in order to be of greatest benefit to others, this is deeply non-virtuous. The person doing such discouragement will be accruing an immense amount of non-virtue, because that discouragement may well serve as an obstacle for the new bodhisattva's spiritual development. They may have some doubts, they may step back from their commitment, and so forth. In this way, create a small obstacle, or it may even lead to them giving up bodhicitta, and therefore the likelihood of them becoming a Buddha is severed. So this is deeply non-virtuous, to discourage such a person to rather strive for their own individual liberation, to strive for the quick goal of a hero, or the goal that takes longer, that of the solitary realizer, but still 2 goals which can be achieved far more quickly than that of the bodhisattva's path. So this is something that we're being advised against doing, because of the harm that is done to that individual by discouraging them. And if one's discouragement is successful, all beings suffer because a Buddha is lost. But for this to be non-virtuous, one's discouragement does not even need to be successful. It's the mere act of intentionally discouraging them from such a worthy goal. And again, to be very clear, this is about someone who is a suitable vessel, someone who is capable and does have genuine interest in either becoming a bodhisattva or once a bodhisattva to become a Buddha. So whether one is successful not in discouraging them, this is non-virtuous and should not be done because of the harm that follows.
다디네기 주시세 간사디 다 전주선바 레가 말다 전주선 고 전주선비기 리글네 봐 리기여 봐 리기여 되게 저거다 자 그런 잠니지 고미야래 되네기 거부여 봐 되네 뭐버여 봐 되지마도 다데 전주선 길라 맞게 버려 봐다 제가 되네기 셔라다 고 되네기 뭐버여 봐 지라 안 되네기 봐 교와 당하는 지금 말해 사실들도
maybe again to make this clear, this is not, whilst this is certainly in relation to someone who is a suitable vessel to the Bodhisattva Dharma, it's not necessarily that they are a Bodhisattva, although they may be a new Bodhisattva and one discourages them, or they may not be a Bodhisattva, but they are of Bodhisattva lineage. In other words, they have a deep aspiration to become a bodhisattva and become a Buddha for the sake of others. So discouraging a person who's not yet a bodhisattva, and maybe even quite far from becoming a bodhisattva, but discouraging them from striving to become a bodhisattva, despite them being of bodhisattva lineage. In other words, they are suitable, they have an interest in the bodhisattva path. Discouraging them is to be avoided.
네, 도당아기 지미자세데. 다 죄보용서 dor미자세데 전주 심비기 죄발라 로베기 데네기 데버여바다 네 니버여바디게 시월 데네기 죄 전주 심비 죄발 로바 죄바들이야. 아니 라바도 전주 심비기 domba 소야도 빈에 추름 소야라서 봐. 데네기 제디게 네 dor미자세 뒤수야 네 dor겨 말했을 간질에 가르송 거스네 그런 데네기 냠는디게 슈고 직 첨부 제마도 나가요 말했어. 그래야지 아니 제투 제고 말에 맞는 디그레스. 제가 도로바다 나게 템바 나 잡아이나 디바다로 그랬어. 디바다로 데네디기 니치게 타반 산지고 토주 그랬어. 데네게 냠는 슈고 직 제고 말했어. 어두스는 지겨 말했어. 제바 용수 들으면서 전주심비 제바라 레베티파 어디라고 말이든 제고 말했으니 파 어든 네파 냠는 제파 샤 도와서는 냠 제마 주바서 어두시겨 말했어. 제고 말했어 그러다 되네. 아니 그래서는 도당아기 지메셔서 도당아 도도바 돌라바다 나라서 바장 대바이나 니기 디바 다그레 되네. 사요고바 토주 그래서 되네게 어두시에네. 아니 지메셔서도 The
third and fourth line, do not cause them to completely reject the bodhisattva conduct. Do not mislead them through sutras and mantras. I think one here again is being advised how not to behave towards someone who is a suitable vessel, someone who is either a new bodhisattva or inclined to the bodhisattva paths. To such a person, do not cause them to completely reject the bodhisattva conduct. So this refers to someone who is engaging either before or after they've become a bodhisattva in the various activities of a bodhisattva, such as generosity, ethics, and so forth. And where one may discourage them by saying, these things aren't necessary. What is necessary is to realize emptiness. One gains liberation through that. The other deeds of the bodhisattva, these aren't important. You can ignore them. They aren't necessary. This is wrong. This is deeply mistaken and prevents the person from spiritually developing. And then misleading through sutra and mantra, this can take differing ways, where one can say, to a practitioner, there's no need to recite these various, recite or study the various texts relating to developing bodhicitta and acting and the deeds of the bodhisattvas. These are necessary. Just recite mantra, and like that you'll become a Buddha. By only reciting mantra, you will purify vast non-virtue, accumulate merit, and become a Buddha. The rest of it, all the sutras and the study of them and the recitation of them, this isn't necessary. This too would be misleading, and one should refrain from doing so.
Denegi 지금 그런데 어떤 아직 직직 딩아데스 된바이나 아니 디기 아니 디화차자 다루 그래서 근데 달벽고 뭐 토브를 산유고 뭐 토브를 해야 돼. 근데 도대 사직 로베네 되니 아니 산유고 뭐 토브를 해야 돼. 아니 지기 되니기 도로 통신에 아니 다 아니 바 소소라는 게 어디 전주심이 주변이냐면 되니 지게 전주심이 주발을 시우지 랍제 되느냐면 저거 말이 되니 누신에 되게 되는 제가 사바는 교보상에 주고도 와서 되니 장고 말해서 되니 계셔야 돼. 되니 도다 직로 통신이 내가디 김전 야고 하고 같이 근데 마샬이야 되니 시에기 제바이나데 고하다야 차고래서 오다다.
So these two lines, one is being strongly advised not to discourage someone from pursuing the bodhisattva deeds, the bodhisattva conduct, and discouraging them through basically talking nonsense from oneself not understanding the Dharma, saying things like, if you just recite mantra, you'll purify and thereby attain liberation and enlightenment. There's no need to recite and study the various sutras and cultivate the various mental qualities presented therein. And there's no need for you to engage in the various activities of the bodhisattva. All you need to do is recite mantra, and like this, quickly you'll become a Buddha. Whereas if you engage in the bodhisattva activities and you cultivate the various qualities of mind as presented in the sutra, this just takes a long time and is not required. So this is, to be blunt, this is talking nonsense and is deeply misleading someone. Because if one hasn't cultivated through sutra a deep understanding of the Dharma, one will not know what one is doing with Tantra. And therefore, the rapid results that Tantra can present will not be achieved.
냐와두고 말했어야지. 되네도와 제가 되네지는 가지고 강배 til이야. 되는 알사제 부라제 주 치마라 주제 어다 부가제나 쇠나가요 말씀에서 남 쇠로는 디바치모사이로와 제가 되네게 너를 치모사이로와 되네자 미야 지금 되네게 또베 뉴버다 되네게 또고 뉴버 예딩한 지 토바 있나 냠nen지 또베 뉴버로 토바 있나 야 되네게 제네야 지금 So,
for example, there's a mantra that one can recite and blow on the soles of one's feet, and the idea, or the soles of one's shoes. And then the idea is that when one walks, if one kills insects, then they will be liberated from the lower realms. So if one reads this in a text or is told this, they think, oh, well then I can just recite this mantra, blow it on the soles of my feet, and then I can walk around and I do not need to be careful. Because in effect, any insect I inadvertently kill, they receive a great benefit. So this is deeply misunderstanding how a Tantra would work. If a practitioner is highly developed and they have the actual power that through their recitation they can have this impact on beings, that's a different story. But this is not the case for the vast majority of people, for almost everyone.
차기도 왔다. 차기도 와. 제자들 때에 동예신의 차투그레스는 지라제 안주 동예신의 차투여요 말아. 그래서 안주를 장도여요 말아. 제자들이 섬다지 어다들 동예신의 차기레스 즉 휴에치는 안주 강부 나야마도 차투여요 말아. 다 장도 유간 하고서 유연제 롭종 유간 쪽이네 나디 주변에 차투고 와 지다 디 신의 차투 그래서 돼 이거 니버 유연지기 두고를 맞도 니버 맨날 토야메로와 니나 신레다 나 식시된 바에는 디 아니 지기 디바 다루 그래서 야다 얘네게 그 니버 유연지기네 되어도 디바 다두고 그래 아 저기 니버 셀 말레바이나 되면이나 디바 차산 다투야 갈래 하고로 와 그래서 되네서 어두니기 차산에서 한번 와체네 어두시네 지겨 말해서 그래.
So this is where education and training based on education is so important, because one can take a bland statement, read it and believe it to be completely relevant to you, or hear it in a teaching and believe it to be completely relevant to you. This in this instance, then one recites a mantra, blows, and thinks that's all done. Now these beings I stand on, they will be liberated. But this is like someone who watches a video on YouTube, seeing a martial arts expert breaking bricks and breaking planks, and thinks, I can do that too. I've seen the video, and then starts hitting bricks and planks. All they're going to break is probably their hand. And the reasoning is the same. If you lack a skill based on training, based on knowledge, you are not going to achieve the effect that you hope for. This is imperative just in normal events in our life, as well as training our mind.
소신단이 치마다 도와다냐 가버자 지라 소방 롱주비 추당탕라 도와메스.
Now we come to a new section of maybe 5 verses, which is about abandoning behavior that will cause others to lose faith in the Dharma and in the practitioners of Dharma. So we come to the 91st verse. When spitting or when a toothbrush is discarded, cover it immediately. Spurn what is shameful, such as urinating in water and on land that is made use of. So what I've translated as toothbrush is literally it's a piece of wood that is still used in India, that one chews, and by chewing on the wood one cleans one's teeth. Now most people in India, just like here, use a regular toothbrush, a plastic-based toothbrush, but still many in India use this piece of wood, a special kind of wood, a little twig really that one chews. And so here one is being advised about how to discard it. But whether one is, I don't know if anyone here uses this traditional piece of wood that one chews on. Probably everyone here uses plastic toothbrushes, like most people in India. But the advice is equally relevant.
아니 치마다 치마세야 되는 쪽이다 소주네 즉 치마디게리 안디 멤버션다 치마 칸마 치마디게 바지 근데 까지 간주 마주 바 유교 말해서 바 치마드는 dormi자세 다 dor교 말해서 소주에게 신당 아니 소주네 가족이다 가게 치마라서 바 간주 마주 바 유교 말해서
When one brushes one's teeth, one also spits. And the advice is the same: cover it immediately, whether one is spitting then or at any time. This is something that one should do in a polite manner, and in this way, as it says, cover it immediately.
That the negi kanjuma yugo ma diwa that the negi yugo sa kan de yugo chumbe ne ma kap ku re sa ti kap cha sa kan ji kap che ne zoba mi shan da ge ton de zoba ma ton ye de ne du chin so go re so da.
This piece of wood, maybe a plastic toothbrush one would put in the bin, but the piece of wood one should cover, just like with one spit, cover it with earth, so that no one sees it and it doesn't disturb the minds of others.
That means Mazuke, Yama di Mero, the Yansani Yin Lusa, go Susuzan, Yin Karina de Luxa Sususha Roda, that's cover Cha Sadi, then Yansan and the Pa Juatam City, Dundadi Pa Juana, that the Niki Lusa Kang Susha Pa, and just been on Lu, such order.
Of course, in our modern world, we don't brush our teeth out in the bush. We all do it in the bathroom. We have a bin, and we should use the bin in the normal way.
Then there's me now the Chia Kalina, the two bed La Lea, what they go about the Sabsa Chigo, what on the Chikanju, you heard in the Yomar, the Yahua, Chizadi, Denegi, Geshe Chimbi, soon be get Java the Tumbaro, Chagorwa.
So really, there's not much to say, not much advice to give to you, because this is how everyone behaves here in Australia. But of course, this text was composed, 1,400 years or so ago. So then the situation was somewhat different.
Denegi Jima Kanju Maju, Yuala Sobata, Denegi Energy, Denegi to get Lamga Tangmaro Hubina, and Delia Chima Kanju Luch and Dinba Suela so among Buligoro, says that this is Tom and Mishasang or Daddy Mazeva Ton and Mishas and Simamaki Chayungorova, Deneza, and Dichiko Mara said it in Erwa.
But where we can see it is where people come from a culture where habits such as these have not been developed, and they come to a culture where, for example, here, the environment is kept clean. People don't spit in the street, they don't throw their garbage wherever they feel like it. And if someone does that, because that's what they're used to doing elsewhere, immediately that stands out. And people's minds go negative and they criticize. So this criticism, this negativity arising in the mind of others, this is what we've been guarded against, or to act in a way so as to prevent that from happening.
That Jila Soba long jubi, Chudan Tangla Dormichas, Dora Miss. That Jila Soba down the Kalas and the Zopatayata, Chimbatayati, and the Zopa Chamber, and the Chimbatayati, so and the Chisora, the Nigger long jubi, that been in long jubi, Sidu, that long jubi, Chudan, Tangla Dormichas, and the Manajuki that Mimang was Chazangi, Tumo Pigetasaki, that Tang Bach Rodan, Desulian. Zopatayala soba the Chimbataya Damara to stand you mares, and then tomorrow long Julia and the Chimbatayala soba the Zopatayala soba to Chigio mares, then the Chevene, Joamadin, the Nigi Dora Mes, then the Chevene, Meabas, me, Yapo Zigio mares and Yapo Tongo mares, Mishandagi, or the Gunji is or that.
The third and fourth line, spurn what is shameful, such as urinating in water and on land that is made use of. So again, this is something that's very clear for us. Where one goes to the toilet, if one is going outdoors, then one should not go to the toilet in either communal land or in private property because of the negative response from others. This is not what is considered normal behavior.
Chuda de Nigga Tang Chebena, and Digi, Nijigi, Genjine, Nazilea, Million, Nazilea, Yanga Yoruba, and me, Shazan, such as Sobache, Mishan, name, Makiva, the Magaba, so I didn't Yungorwa, and the Nigga, it is then Donalia, San Jumnegi, Songa, that's just a Lucin, the Songa, just a Dimez, and then I get Chimbalas of a Tavi there. Zangubu Yasalia, Ganglia Chimbatagio, Magasan Sadi, come to Resura, just had the nigger San Yigi, 거기 숨겨 털어야 맛을 손여야 돼 상이.
People don't want to live in an unclean environment. They also don't want to live in an area where illness may come from the environment. So for these very obvious reasons, we should take care of an environment. And the Buddha, 2,500 years ago, he spoke quite extensively on how we should relate to the environment, that we should take care of our environment because of negativity that follows from abusing the environment.
네, 그것은 안매지. 다 되니기 되제. 되네 단 지글이게 줘봐도 전에 안지겨 말해서. 나야 칼라사당 고송고래. 카강 와당 자제당 카다나니 삼미자스. 어두시네 강박장의 미두징. 라반냠버 미니오스.
So the 92nd verse it continues until I think the 95th verse on how to guard the behavior of one's body. So the 92nd verse, do not eat with an open or full mouth, nor noisily. Do not sit with outstretched legs, nor rub your hands together.
난 가강와다시도 칼라세리가리아 지 칼라디 카나바 감로스면 체다다다다 사고마도 배 가다다 강전에 안데 배 지도 세겨 말해지래 가강와세도 가다다 강진도 세겨 말해서.
The Tibetan starts with a full mouth. So this refers to if you stuff your mouth so that you have difficulty chewing.
난 자제나시도 칼라세리가를 배 잡잡잡잡 되는 세겨 말해 가 어두신의 세겨 말해서 자이 즉 잠에 봐 잠는데 사고 그래서.
And the second part is no, don't eat noisily. So yeah, do not make noises whilst eating.
Nizo 가르레스네 칼라세리가를 가다다 장제 두신의 직자원의 민신다들이 마제바 통고를 제자미도 어디 칼라사라야 보면 칼라사 신문스 미안의 셈을 마기버차다 미 카타야라서 봐 엔디네 용고를 아니 디네는 미 카타베나 아예 코베 두자도 코에 커지지세 균제 제베는 디버사주고를 와데샤네 디버사주고를 이제 디네 디버사야기 기엔도 마주와지고레스 너소스이네 지 칼라카나라 감체 다다다다를 세베나 아니 디곧 사디오요 와데 디니기 칼라요 다 시우 얀 세베네 아직 네 강아 체야다 디니기 우가에 닝아유들 와다 지사 수수게 삼다베네 닝아유 미션에 삼단 미 마제바지 미 토낭 아니 마제바지 오구만지가 그 지지지 니 이제 균주지야도 혼돌이야 아니 디바로 사주고 제사 디니기 디바사에 끼는 마도와 제고를 했어야지.
So the purpose of this advice in this whole section, so the previous verse, this verse, and those coming, is about acting in a way that does at least guard against others' minds becoming unhappy, going negative and criticizing and thereby creating negativity. The whole purpose of the whole goal, purpose of the Bodhisattva's endeavors is to help others to create virtue and gain freedom from suffering. So if the Bodhisattva is acting in a manner that causes others to criticize and become unhappy, and they will thereby create negativity. Moreover, they will distance themselves from the Bodhisattva, saying, look how this person eats. They spit all over the show, or they go to the toilet wherever they want. I want nothing to do with this person. And the Bodhisattva has this aspiration to be of benefit. And therefore, if they act in a way that causes this kind of response from others, as well as creating negativity, this is contrary to their very goal.
카저 칼럼는 말레바도 말레니엘네 카르 바당교 말해서 그러다 카다지도시 제자다 칼라도 수레제 카담들레도 카다네 사고르마도 비니 칼라데 말레니엘네 카 바시우 당제도시 되면은 디네사교 말해제 카다니네 삼미샤세.
So if we take what for us in English is the first line, a bit literally, how's one supposed to eat? Do not eat with an open mouth. How are you going to put the food in your mouth? So, whilst the word used is do not eat with an open mouth, we'd be more accurate to say do not chew with an open mouth. So it's clear. You open your mouth, you put the food in, you close your mouth, you chew away. But without a mouth that's too full and not too noisily.
And the Maseba Mishanagi Tonala Maseba me and Ajigo that the Kalasashim be talk what she just like to say and Gunji and the Yungorwa, the Neza and Dike, the Shanlia, Shangi, Gunji Sheba and the Gunji Honsolia, Divasa Gora, which is a Divasa Judy Sosugi, the Nigi, Sana Mardi Ginji, Honsolia, Divasa Ginchago, which is a Deneza, Lucian as subject or as
And the reason here is the same with all of these. If one displays poor manners or acts in a way that those around you find just unacceptable, the result is people will become unhappy, and merely others becoming unhappy is what the Bodhisattva does not want to achieve. The Bodhisattva wants others to be happy. But it's not just others becoming unhappy, they will criticize. They may say something, but certainly mentally they will. And in this way, they create negativity. They strengthen this negative way of thinking. And then thirdly, a distance will grow between the Bodhisattva and the being they wish to benefit. This person will look at the behavior of the Bodhisattva and say, I want nothing to do with such a person. And in this way, the Bodhisattva is creating obstacles to their beneficial activities with regards to others.
The Gangpa de do me as it down the David Gablia, then you take Hall to be that I didn't say to be a David Galia, Gangpa Yanji, and do your Mares, the Gangpa Yanjiba, Gambo Community, what I Gangpa Yan do me as.
So this is then the third line. This is also something found in sutras. Do not sit with outstretched legs. One should rather sit in a neater fashion.
Deso Jigan Denigi Devine Shelia Maguba Chagore, Maguba Chagging, then Shella Maguba Chad. Gangbajan do the meat parcel draw in and Lamgalia, Drosselia, Ganga Jigo Pachichigurua, the Nigi, and Jig Shanla Parchi Gangati Ala Sobada, and then Shelia Magubagi, the Nigi Yungu Benza, and the Nijigo Maresation.
The society tends to have rules about physical conduct. So where this comes from, it says sitting with outstretched legs is seen as disrespectful. And why? Well, because especially when the number of people are packed together, they may want to walk past. And it's difficult if someone is all stretched out, taking up a whole lot of space, spreading out everywhere. And this is not showing respect to others around you, or courtesy towards others around you.
This Manjugi Manju Chunju Kable, this Shazan Pamig Lapsaki, Anju Deniki, Dore said, Anju Gomshi Yore, Jeza, Demi Mimbo Yoskela Gangba Yang, Duada, and the Katan says that Kala Deniki, Jacha said, and then did Yawazing Mar, did Namun, the Lapjaruchi, and the Gomshi Yore. Yeah, Yansa, Demi Chica. Tiang do Gangba Duada, Denis, Jungoro, but the Yama, Deniki, Madu Lumbaduana, Deniki, and Chumar, that Chumar Jimare.
So when I was a child, I imagine the same as you, all these rules of behavior you were taught by your parents. And so there will be some differences across culture, but we certainly were taught not to sit with outstretched legs, because this is disrespectful for those who are wanting to move by. And so this was very much a custom when I was younger. Now these days, perhaps not so much. Things do change with time, but certainly when I was young, this is how everyone behaved.
Lava number, many was the Nievas in the poor town, the Lava Niga Yam the poor tank of Maresi, that don't Dirisha, Lava Niga Yam the poor tank of Maresi, Lava Judy Gabla, Lava Niga, Dumbo Lava Chick, poor Lava Chick, didn't Lava Chick poor to 2 or less matter, Lava Niga the Negi, poor town to your Maresi, to Sumi said the Lava number Mija was, Mini was, yes, the poor town allegory, just a Lava Yamdo. And the poor tank of Mares, Chisada, Dambo lava chick the tree, the Nelavan, Jig the portrait tree, then lava, dine laba chi ti pur chi ko du shin du ko re sa chi.
The fourth line, nor rub your hands together. So what this refers to is guidance on how to actually wash your hands. So when you wash your two hands, you should wash one hand with the other, and when you finish, wash that hand with the other hand. So perhaps one is more used to washing two hands at the same time, but here the advice is to wash one hand with the other and then alternate.
이 가리나 되고 두시네 데네 당보 두스주셔네 당모하고 자동매 지인이세 당보 라고디 바 데네게 포르투 안디 주전네 두시네 포르투 안지지마도 당보네 두시네 라고 당모 자고 자동매 이러다 데네 이러죠.
So I'd imagine this was because it was felt at the time that when cleaning one's hands, it's more effective if you wash both together like this. It's not so as effective as if one with one hand washes the other and then exchanges. So that was, I assume, the reason why this edict was made, why this was considered good behavior.
나 아디네 셴바 말진 네다도 부메시나 지미자 지딘 마디 규바군 통나지데 봉어자스.
The 93rd verse. Whether traveling or resting, do not be alone with a woman of another family. Observe and inquire about all that leads to a loss of faith in the world and abandon it.
난 대저 진주semba rab중로시 이나싱로다 되네게 셴바라서바 셴바시데다 먼저게 달라 셴바 용고리 되는가 중에 많이다 지게 샘쟁에 따당 버줄라서 텐조야게 강 지겨로 받아 따게를 세우러 가서 어두시네 되네 용고와 되네게 다 되네게 셴바라서바 대 셴바 되네게 달라 셴바라서바 대부메 다 지분염도 다 되네게 셴교 말에 셴제 두시네 셴샤요 말에서지 셴바세야 돼.
So the word I've translated as traveling is literally to ride. So this is advice for ordained bodhisattvas that when riding an animal such as a horse or perhaps a cow or depending on the region, maybe a donkey, whatever was being ridden. So that I've translated as traveling, but it's literally to ride.
지분님도 모터 지분나 주의시 봐서도 스토브나 대디토교 말에서 책으로와 다양직 돼서 랑랑이 분야당 파마다 아마로다 이네는 해줘요 말아와.
So in a more modern context, where we perhaps don't ride animals that frequently, then this would refer to maybe traveling, so like driving in a car, that for an ordained person to do so alone with a woman who is not a relative, this is best avoided. If it is a relative, then no problem.
ngaje desolya rabjungina denigi dombalya ane barshirage nyanga barshirong si barwa dine di kingi da yong barshirage ni barshirong si ba yinza ane de nyele ne ya anji mayong ngwe ne ya ngongo go chidu du shine togyo mares songwa da.
So this is advice for ordained bodhisattvas. And the reason is quite clear, that if they're spending time alone with a woman who's not a relative, then there is a potential for an obstacle for to their vows to arise in their mind.
어디니게 말제 니다도 세상아제레다 매 먼저 말제스 마 띵야게 땡스 땡갈서 땡 땡갈라 마 땡갈이야 땡직 강알이야 뉴스네 냠도 되게 말해서야다 말데 니에서야다 니 강바지보로서 되니게 강바지보랴 아니 러시아로 보면 같이 두시는 냠도 되게 말해서 뒤송거다 쉔바 말된 니다도 부메 셴나 지메자서데 부메 지보다 냠도 아니 두시네 되게 말해서지.
So this is the case not just with traveling, but also with resting. And here the word for that I've translated as resting is literally a mattress for sleeping. So in an environment where one is physically resting, then an ordained person should not be alone with a woman of another family, a woman from another family. Because again, that would not be appropriate to be resting on the same bed together. The word other or another, that's translated as another. So one could take this as also meaning in another context. In other words, not referring to an ordained bodhisattva, but a non-ordained bodhisattva. For them too, they should not be traveling or resting alone with a woman from another family.
Yemena nyamdu soso karo da nyamdu da buina da bomina da soso karo da nyamdu mishanda chige tewa che deni chi konyi jibu nyamdu drodia da niga jibu kangba nala drodia bara so chumaina ani 파저 미 거부 지구디 거부 기용 말와 안디게 아니 견주시기로 미생이 내 견주시야 연구로와 제가 디네자 아니 디 소수기 너주 매바 있네양 미생이 견주시나 미 견주시엔들 디파사고래 제가 미생이 안 토담 도시미라 남발이 용을 제가 디네자 소수기 너주 매바 있네나 도시기요 말했 너주도 제 맞춰 봐라 너주 매나양 마제바이나 디네 되바이나 미생기 견주시기리스 아니 미시 견주시 미생기 마제바기기리스 올다.
So the first two lines, it's presented as being whether a male bodhisattva, whether ordained or non-ordained, traveling or resting, do not be alone with a woman of another family. So the sexes one can reverse. This was just written in this way because of the predominantly male audience that was taught to 1.5 millennia ago. But so you can change the genders around so that it's relevant to yourself. And a further reason then why a non-ordained bodhisattva should not be alone with a woman of another family is, now for us in the English it goes to the fourth line, because it leads to a loss of faith in the world. And what that way of expressing means is that this is generally conduct that would give rise to criticism. If someone who was perhaps in a position of leadership, a position of spiritual authority, was seen to be acting in a way that was contrary to the social norms, that would lead to criticism. So this is not a question about whether the bodhisattva was doing anything wrong or not, whether there was, or from either party, the bodhisattva or the woman, from either party, if there was any nefarious intent. If there was nefarious intent, of course, different story, shouldn't be done. But even where there is no faulty motivation, such behavior should still be avoided because of worldly customs. People will criticize. And when they criticize, they create non-virtue. And this is contrary to the bodhisattva objective. The bodhisattva is trying to guide beings to accrue virtue. Likewise, if people criticize, they're also unhappy. And bodhisattvas are guiding beings towards happiness. So for these reasons, one should observe one's behavior and ensure that it is concordant or in harmony with what social norms.
Rabjun dile jenju simba rabjun ine rabjun po yongore rabjun mo yongore niga yongorowa jena deji dile bume da ne jige azu shine nyamde tegyo mare se de rabjun po la shigo da di docho di nyamdo da kaligosne bume ne rabjun mo yime na jenju simba rabjun mo yine ne geba bume gi roba shanda meba geba da nyum jibudu shine 또 지겨 말해서 되기로와 dondaala diniki cheba ina ane mi khatnayada shenye madebe geyaji yungore jisan digi nyokra yungorwa dini yasa sosuge nuru che gyaro maje gyaro sosuge nuru cheyage cheba yi bache yonsi bare sosuge nuru mashoba ina ya sosuge mashoba ina shenye khatnayada madebe geya yungore dini yasa majikdi made kun thongda ma jide bangwar cha sidu 제자다 지딘 현기 심제 현다게 통제 마데베 계게 되니기 주주되게 차상 안에 통제도 하고 와지는 은소속에 오두신에 디디소야 잼제 방고래서 지겨 말해서 중고래 근데 지디 방고자 지세디다 소속에 다 지금 하되니게 마데바게 계획이 니서 한 먹어봐게 되게 이나야 지금 lumba 소소소야 지금 미라 되서 공시대 개발되는 연구로와 되는 마신 바래 되는 파 지시는 파 지지 간에 되는 지금 마대베기야 되는 연구로 되는 가르에서는 반니수지 지하고 와 제제 온도신의 방고를 해서
Just to emphasize again a point made in the previous segment, that when one refers to ordained bodhisattvas, there will be ordained bodhisattvas who are either males or monks or females and nuns, and for them the advice would be not to be alone with a woman or a man of another family, depending on their sex. And likewise for non-ordained, that the procedure would be the same. Now to look more fully at the third and fourth lines, observe and inquire about all that leads to a loss of faith in the world and abandon it. So there are two techniques, one of observing and one of inquiring. So observing is about seeing what is clearly acceptable within a society and taking this into account with one's conduct. So again, just to emphasize, it's not that one is necessarily doing anything wrong, but by being aware of the social norms, one is aware of the impact one's behavior will have on others. So therefore, one should guard against criticism or negativity, acting in a way that criticism or negativity arises in the minds of others. And in terms of inquiring, this is particularly relevant when one is in a new culture, or a culture that is new to you. There you need to ask from someone who is knowledgeable of that culture. Ask about their customs, what is considered suitable or not, and then adjust one's behavior accordingly. So it comes down to, whilst ensuring, of course, one's motivation is suitable, one still acts in a way in accordance with the social norms of where you happen to be.
예산 지대 방어샤세데 lumbusoso게 내타다 곰시다 미다와 유반자 데니게 데 lumbu카시나리아 안지게 안주 뭐고마디기 파소데 제모스디 기슈다마라 시야라서 바다 시나이 아니 지게 제모리자 데리아 나함도스가 연구 말와 나지 lumbu카시나리아 데니 시신나람사 뇨라라야다 데니게 투포치야 나라서 뇨라 침볼라야 몽고르와 제네자다 데니게 네소디게 네 하고 같이 한번 수사 먹은 현리야 기시디 된데 도시 하고 같이 그래서 하고 같이 안디서 삽삽 지역을 해서 스티리도
It's important to be careful when moving when one is amongst others of a different culture, because different cultures have different ways of acting and speaking that is considered acceptable or unacceptable. And thereby one may act or speak in a way that is perfectly normal for the culture you come from, but the people you're amongst now may take great offense. Or one may make a joke that in your culture is completely unoffensive, but now in new company, those same words are interpreted in a very different way. So here it's not about pushing your views on others and make everyone accept things how you want them to be, but rather you move with the society, you take into account these social norms of the community that you are just a part of.
Dinanganzi Lumbegi Mediki Dualesi, Dinigi Norushi Churagi, Yangasimborisha. Nanzi Lumbegi, Miro di Dualesi, Norushi, Yangasimor.
If people from where I'm from, if they were to come here, I would definitely have to give them a lot of advice, otherwise they would get themselves into many awkward situations.
Andondala Karisene, Anjugi, Lungai, Janju Sempiki, Nyamlin, Anjuki, Nyamlin Chedu, Chizaja, Shanlia, Pembi Chawa Kanya towards Shanlia, Nube Chawa, Sadi. Bango Gorba, just a Lunga Juba, Shanley, Nubi, but Shanley was Manuba, Di Yengen, Shanlia, and the Dibosayagi, Conrolaya, Dang, Shangi, Chelia, Gunjia, and Madebe, Deniki Juba, Jushuba, Chasan Zemore, the Sungores, or Tamajele, the Nezang Lunga Juba Digipa, Yabo Sungores, Cesada, Deniki, Cesasangi, that Rabjoli, Ben. Do love just a council, the Lungi, Jubi, Yamin, Chick, do Labjanalia, catching with you some more, but just that the Niki, dear Choma, dear Choma, the Choma, said Macho among both Sungoro, said the Deniza, Shanley, and Madeva Jeb and Shanley, Dibosacoro, Chedan, and you simply Yamnaja, Shanley Pengu, mother, Shanley Dibosage, Shan Madeva Jachina, Digomaro, Deniza, Shan Madeva Jada, Shan Ye Kataya, Shan Ye Kataya, Losoba, Chedini Chazapa. Zemja Zabjin, the same way, said you. That Lunga Juba, Dushin Chazan Semwood, Yahuchi, said. The Kanjele Dush Semiata, that's also Lunga Juba, Yahucheva in a Dini, me and that point, or the Juba Yahutu, say with me, Najig, Jesu Iranian, but you bet Yahudu was Jesu Iraniana, Shanlia, and the Debagia. The nigger and the share, all the Andrew and the chair to the Yahudu Sembege, and Delia, and Jignam Lencheg, Donny Dumbegi, or Jane Pandoya, Duce or Yungorva, the Neza, the nigger Jova Zemore, said this more. Says that the nigger, Yumzelo need what Shen Madebagia, Shen Madebagia, Shen Yakataya, Shen Tibo, the Magiag, Donald Sonia Jigje, and the nigger, so the Yahucheban, Shen or the Juba, Delia, Shen Debagia. Debagia, Delicis Iranchiana, or Dinajing again, Yamen de Dinachi to a Jehu Sempigida, Dushi Dumbegi, Dinungra, or Dusine, Jehores at Dinadiro.
The verses we are covering in this section are quite unusual in the sense of this is not the normal topics that we talk about. But actually, these topics are presented in quite some detail in the Vinaya, where there is a lot of advice about what one can physically do and what one should physically not do, or what one can say and what one should not say. So there is certainly quite some discussion of this in the Dharma, although it's not something that normally comes up in the texts that we cover. So therefore, it's important to be very aware of the purpose of why Shantideva is even mentioning this, because it seems very strange. He's telling us how to eat, how to go, where to go to the toilet, where and how to brush our teeth, and these kinds of things. It all seems a little strange. Like earlier I said, that these are things we were taught as children, and that is the case. But here, hopefully, with these last two lines in this verse, the meaning or the purpose behind this section is clear, that for even those who aspire to become bodhisattvas, and certainly for new bodhisattvas, the very purpose of their existence is to be of benefit to others. This is what wills them forward to be of benefit to others. And what comes with this is to never harm others. So here we are talking about really quite minor details of physical conduct, things that we don't normally in our Dharma teachings ever discuss. But were we to come across someone who's potentially a great teacher, someone who could have a great impact on our lives, but they're not acting in accordance with our social norms, they're spitting here and going to the toilet all over the show and eating in a way that's really uncouth, we would feel a revulsion towards that person. We'd want to keep a distance from them. Whereas on the other hand, merely acting in accordance with the social norms ensures that others' minds are more relaxed, They're not getting agitated about things which, whilst have no real importance, they certainly would distract. So if the Bodhisattva rather acts in a way that's in accordance with local customs, in particular if their behavior is elegant, then this will have a positive impact on others. At the very least, there will not be this as a basis for criticism and negativity. But what's much more likely is that other qualities of the Bodhisattva will be readily perceived by others. And in this way, then, the Bodhisattva can have a positive impact on others. So therefore, even taking care of minor forms of physical conduct, like is described here, for a Bodhisattva, this is important to do.
Tejik chasante sungu gore, dine sungu da delia jige karasene lunga gi cheba mariba yadi da garingosene semgi masung semgi masung ba na dine ki yungo mar je semgi sungu gore semgi sunga da den shishin ting ko gore ba je da ngan jugi samlo de ki yu chola samlo de ki di na ki yu chola sam ta di pa shukcher nu ba cher dang gore je da gewa jin ya tu da then chengi dine ki 지게 점바 냠발라 소바다 데네게 점바 바메게 삼노디기 파 삼노디기 뻥고고라 데네자 데네게 쥐바디기 파 기디나 데네 치디 점바 땡고고라다 바유 땡고고라 어디 점바 때 어디에 디신 디고마 딘신 디고마다 세베기도 파 점바 땡제 데네 셈 바메고 와도 마타와지 고고래 데네자다 데네게 냠네 치디칼라 셈리아 점바 땡야다 바유 땡야게 냠네 디리고래 데네게 젠바띠 바유띠에 류항이 쥐방안바디게 파송요데 수투미냠을 리고래 내내게 냠을 제발에 때네 셴레 마데바 제바 마제바당 아니 셴게 카마다와로 셴게 녀바 마사바데 용고래 내내게 엔지 소수게 내내게 야고지요데 셴게 대레 대바제바다 제수 일어나지야 거부제 용도 셴리야 개와사야데 용고래 지내자 도시네 냠내 지야데 개체몰 차고 당은 저게 obdigala samdana kalazaya da dedan digede jaja lapchiya ho marwa sambige samlo chi tensewa ina shipso samdabena delia and tembatem bige digina tembatem baye ya and jige bamya ba pa kaya dan jemba nyamba ye pa skaya and dele tine lungo yeje domba tsurimso ya and dele tine shanlia and gewa satu ya da shen debaje ya la sobada tine ya Shen Madeba Poyala Soba Shen Diva Sama Juba and then you say Manguchi Roda.
Again, just to elaborate further on why Shantideva is covering these points, we sit back and we think of the overall context that we find ourselves in here on, where are we? In the 5th chapter in the 93rd verse. We're in the section of the 3 types of the Bodhisattva's ethics, the ethically striving to benefit sentient beings. And this comes within this 5th chapter, which is on vigilance and mindfulness. And it follows the 4th chapter, which was on conscientiousness. So when we take this then as the overall context, we see that if one's physical behavior is such that it causes disquiet amongst others, unease amongst others, this is likely to come from a mind that has not been subdued, that has not been tamed, and such a mind lacks mindfulness and vigilance. Because if a practitioner has developed excellent mindfulness and vigilance, which comes about on the basis of conscientiousness, then their physical behavior will be subdued. They're subdued or tamed. They will not be acting in a way that is unrestrained because of their mindfulness and their vigilance and their conscientiousness. And conscientiousness is why it was covered in the previous chapter, and this chapter is on mindfulness and vigilance and includes ethics, is conscientiousness, or maybe in English we maybe talk about having a good conscience, seeing something as ethical or not ethical. So conscientiousness is this basis upon which the various teachings of ethics can be cultivated within. If one lacks a moral conscience, or conscientiousness, a moral conscience, if one lacks that, how can one develop ethics? So that is more of the foundation. And if one's ethics are excellent, then one certainly will not be doing much that will bring harm to others, but also will be able to much more easily benefit others because of the quality of one's own mind and because of one's behavior. So this is the broader context within which we receive guidance on how to sit and how to eat and where to go to the toilet. So now we come to the 94th verse, which is coming, hidden at the back. Do not point with a finger, but respectfully with the right hand and all fingers extended, indicating even directions like that.
Isanda sermedani mijades chidi manzo diwaji milia lamgaro jira jiktengo wena andene ya dosine zugu jibu zujine dire stedo dire se deyo mares or penechala chine da lamga drosoro chine chi diwaji kawaryosen dene adros zugu do zugu jibu dene adros dire sen duchigyo mares sermedani mijai diseros odi sermedani mijade se 라고 수수지에 두시는 지교 말해서 술배는 미자대서 술배는 미자대서.
So when, for example, someone is asking you for directions and you want to point out the direction they should go in, then do not point with a finger. So like that, one is how one should not point. For example, when giving directions.
아니, 내내기 아직 라고 연바 이 라고 연비기 두시네. 내가 지금 말했어요. 라고 연바. 니시 연비기 지금 말했어요.
And likewise, one should not be using one's left hand.
다지 니 마구 바래 차고래. 주고 지부 주셔 두셔나 라고 연바래 두셔베네 두스 마구 바차겠어라. 제가 니네에서 두시기와 말했어. 제가 가르쳐 버렸으면 구이다 집에 예바이 라바다니 군지 장스 지자다 구이다 집에 구십다 집에 마다 혼술에 되도 구십다 집에 되고 그래서 다 구십에서 집에 되는데 근데 세월에서는 라바 예바기도 신 제거래서 라바 예바 제단 주고 지부고 제요 말해서 라바 예배 차상 주고 차상 두신에 제거래서 되고 그래서 제가 구이다 집에 예배기 라바니 군지 장스 주고 차상 두신에 차상도 제거래서 남야 데이터 템퍼처스 람가딘 오두스요레스 두스용 고레스 라발마선 디네신 두스요레스.
When one points with one's finger or one uses one's left hand, either of those physical gestures indicate a lack of respect to the person with whom you're communicating. It's as if you're elevating yourself and putting them in their place by using these physical gestures. So therefore, one should rather, the third and fourth line, second and third line, but respectfully with the right hand and all fingers extended. So this is how, now the fourth line, one should indicate even directions like that. So when someone, for example, asks for directions, one should use one's right hand and have it outstretched, so not pointing, but again with the right hand, and in this way indicate directions.
Tekharadi nari nganzugi bawada Himalaya gyuchasa lawa nepene tsonga duwada ngure jebene lawa yemba jibu du stebene ane just guisha meba ro chagore chesang ya tsong hashi dusine jebene ngu lengi mare maling dine yor chesa dising mare chesa di guisha meba ri nawar chagore bawada Himalaya yagana chada jibar de diwakane amo that in this even lava yebetea nalasoba yana lava niga to stay alasoba didn't you gusha that tembe chagore.
I don't think you have this custom here, but certainly it's still very present in India today and the Himalayan regions as well, that when one is communicating with others, one should do so with one's right hand. And for example, where you may have experienced traveling in India, one should pay, when paying in cash, pay with one's right hand, and it will be received by the shopkeeper's right hand as well. And in fact, you may have even experienced that if you try to give money with your left hand, it won't be taken or you'll be made to put it down. And so this is because this cultural norm still exists, that it is derogatory or negative, disrespectful towards the person you're communicating if you point or use your left hand. So rather, use your right, or even you can use both hands. That too is considered respectful.
아니 잘라도 파 투스캐로 제사다 되는 제베나 고쿠셰데 템바 책에서 제사 되는 상황도 되지 주고지기 지겨 말해서다 되는 어다지겨 자제 동고고서 잘라도 파 두고서 되는 제베나 아니 마고바 자로 거르스.
And certainly today in the culture I'm from, we'll give things with either the right hand or with both. We will not point. So we won't use the left hand and we will not point. So we would give tea, for example, give a cup of tea with the right hand. And if we were to indicate someone was offering us more tea and we had enough, we would say enough with our right hand. And again, not with a finger, but with the right hand extended. And if we were giving advice, or if we were saying, do this, don't do that, we would not point. This is just considered impolite.
That is dine chebe pasolia and sema maki bachada and pijidu corona dine odadi midi dine bit tonjong azul tonjong dangu ji yagumin de sebe gyunju chiada dine shong yo banza jemba de bakiada magu bakiage jo bachago dine chi and jikyo mare semgo gore sache odushin sungorwada.
It comes down to not acting in a way that will cause others to become unhappy, and even perhaps for anger to arise within them because they feel disrespected. So one should take care not to act in a way that leads to such a potential response.
간주셔봐 하고와 제제 하는 시험과대 개침벌에 제자들이 원미 하모와제 그런 게 전주선비게 아니 남냠내기 되니게 지금 냠내지 심지어 탐지게 된다리야 냠내지에 되버 여바질 되니게 듬버 여바 되니게 리규엔질이야 어다 결혼이 제가 말에 되니 년도에 남도시네 다지 소소지부 된다제선 지게 심비 삼 두시나 근데 지금 말에 제자들이 지금 말에 사이트에서 다 Shebe Gablia, Migi Kamna Mevadi, Hago at the kitchen said. Then Susu Lugi Jonga Jobaruchine, Susu that Jige Lugi Joba said, Kala Lamala Soba, the Soja Lasoba, Kanjo Maju Soba Laso, Chuda Tang, Denigu Uvaina, and the Jige, and the Genje, that Jin, Nenda Yungore, no Koruria, New Gore, and the Shan Korean Nubama, and Shangi, Shalia, and Madevikia. And the Chissonalia, and the Yapomeva Chai, Dini Yomaza, Kataya Lasoba, Dini Yungora, Lava to Chevachiki, Dini Chevinda, that Chevati, the Yapomindu said, Yaji, that Chevala Kataya, and Chelia Kataya Chayadu, and the Chidane, Dini Tibachimasaji, and Yanga Yobaza, this is subject what is. In that Dini is that Lunga Lugi Cheva, and Shalia, and Lamdedia, Duachik, the Chevine, Chasada. Gusheta de Mitone Choma, the Maguba, Pala Maguba, the Chigio, Maguba Jena, Pasha de Simakiba Chayana, and the other two, and the Chigi, Madebakia, and the Kataya Lasoba, Daddy, Jiandu, and Dibasa, and Chigdiniki, Yamlin Jeg, Deva Yuba in Angashi, or that is Yawun, the nation the bit, Yawun Mindu says in the church, Madebakia, the Susu, Jeg, Duba, Meva Chay in Yanga Yoruba, the Ninsa, substitute what he said. That's what you draw out and David Cabrina. That's me gain Susigilia, Dombala Parchemiona, and Shengi, and the Shin, Kataya Lasobada, Genji, Maya, Getandala, substitute what he has, and I did it. The names are the Lunga Vijuba, and Juba, the Passion and Minubada, Rangi, and the Jigger, Ran and Minuba, Shan and Minuba, Rashiniba, the Pembi, Java Chevores, the names are the DJ under the Julia, and the Ripa. In Tembatea, Bayedea, Lucian Yamne Jewore, Sungoroda.
covered a number of verses tonight, starting with the 90th verse. In the 90th verse, this is advice, particularly for Dharma teachers, but even in one's discussions with other people, that when one comes, either as a Dharma teacher or when talking with people you know, if they have an interest, a genuine interest from their side in the teachings of the Bodhisattva path, and have perhaps even a yearning, or perhaps not in that far yet, but an interest in becoming a Bodhisattva, an interest in taking responsibility for the welfare of all beings, guiding beings to a state freed of suffering. So if a person is showing inclination in that area, or certainly if they have generated such a wish, then it's important not to dissuade them from the Bodhisattva path, not to encourage them to rather go for the goals of the hero or the solitary realizer, saying to become a Buddha for the sake of others takes so long, and it's so difficult. You have to deal with all these problematic people. Gain your freedom from suffering. Take care of yourself first and alone. This you should not do. And moreover, one should be careful not to discourage them from the various virtuous activities of the Bodhisattva, or to mislead them in any way. For example, there's no need to focus on ethics, just meditate on emptiness. Or to mislead them by saying, just recite a lot of mantras, you don't need anything else. This is deeply mistaken and will cause, at best, a delay, but it may even cause greater harm than that, and one will accrue a lot of non-virtue. So that was the first verse we looked at. Then we looked at a series of verses on one's physical conduct. So there in the first one we looked at, the 91st verse, one can summarize that verse as being about the need to take responsibility for our environment, to spurn what is shameful, and to take care of our environment. Because this was composed at a time when people would brush their teeth and go to the toilet, just out in the fields or in the bush. So we don't have this as a custom anymore, or as a way of life anymore. But nevertheless, a teaching to take from this is spurn the kind of behavior that is shameful in one's society. Moreover, take responsibility for your environment. One's behavior has an impact beyond oneself. There is an interdependent relationship with others. How we treat the environment has an impact on other people. So take care of the environment, and in general, spurn what behavior is shameful, is considered shameful by society. Then linking to that with the 92nd, 93rd, and 94th verses, where it was the kind of advice that would often be given to children, or to children, how to eat, how to sit, and this kind of thing. But here, what it comes down to is that as aspirants for the Bodhisattva path, we need to take care of our mind, and this we can understand in many ways. But in this context, try and have this motivation of the Bodhisattva at the forefront of your mind, having that as guidance to act and speak in a way that does not bring harm to others, either directly by speaking or acting in a way that's harmful, or as is guided here, to act in a way that leads others to criticize, to become unhappy about, to feel uncomfortable in your presence. And they may well, through their response to your socially unacceptable behavior, generate negative karma. They're also likely to distance themselves from you, and therefore any positive impact you could have had in their life becomes very difficult. So therefore, be aware of social norms. Don't try and change society in terms of their norms. Act in accordance with their norms and build good relationships with others, close relationships with others, and guide them to virtue, away from non-virtue. And the key part of this is relying on the minds we've spoken a lot about in the past: conscientiousness, vigilance, and mindfulness. Utilizing conscientiousness, or one's moral compass, to guide one in what is suitable and what is not suitable. Even if one's motivation is fine, others may impute something untoward upon you. So rely on conscientiousness, and at all times, vigilance and mindfulness. Mindfulness, keeping your good motivation, your bodhisattva motivation, the forefront of your mind. Vigilance, watching closely in case that motivation is lost, and then mindfulness, recalling that motivation. And thereby, one's behavior will be in accordance with social norms. One will not act in ways that cause others to lose faith, to distance themselves from you. So then thank you. We can conclude there for tonight. Thank you.